Hi, this is Billy from thirstgym.com. Today we're talking about an exercise called the stiff leg deadlift. This is a good old-fashioned lower body exercise, really popularized by powerlifters, bodybuilders, and even strongmen. And it's really designed to help bring up the glutes, the hamstrings, and the erectors in the low back. I think a big issue that we see with the stiff leg deadlift is that people that are doing the stiff leg deadlift, they don't know it. They think they're doing a traditional, conventional deadlift, and it tends to look like a stiff leg deadlift. Or they want to be doing an RDL versus stiff leg deadlift. So the main thing about a stiff leg deadlift is that it should be starting from the floor. Okay, it's essentially a regular deadlift, but we're going to talk about how our legs are more on the stiff side, hence where the name comes from. You definitely should not be able to stiff leg deadlift more than your conventional or your sumo deadlift by any means. If so, you definitely know that you're doing something wrong. And usually this is done with a conventional stance, and by all means you can do it with the sumo stance, but you usually see it in the conventional stance. So I would definitely make sure that you understand how to conventionally deadlift first. If you don't know how to do that, I would check that off and then come back to this exercise as you need it, because I think you'll get more bang for your buck from just the conventional deadlift by itself. But the stiff leg deadlift, we're going to emphasize that our legs are relatively stiff. Upper body is neutral, back is relatively flat, and we're going to really work on pushing our hips back but letting the bar kind of round us forward over to our toes, just a little bit more mid-foot heavy than back or our heel heavy. So usually when you do a conventional deadlift, you know, there's a lot of knee bend in comparison to the stiff leg, but also that we're going to use the leg drive to help raise the weight off the floor, which is why your conventional should be tremendously more than your stiff leg. The stiff leg, we're going to start at the top, we're going to have our arms long, and we're going to continue to push our hips back, reaching for the bar and letting our knees bend as much as we need to, so long as we can continue to get bent over to the bar. That's the easiest way to teach it, is to just continue to hinge and push back and keep those arms long while the back is relatively neutral and flat, and then that's going to help set you up into your position. If you do it correctly, your hamstrings are probably going to be smoked trying to get down there into position. And if somebody has awful hamstring mobility, this probably is not the exercise for you until your hamstring mobility and length gets better. So I would look more at the RDL in that case. So feet are underneath our hips, our chest is tall, arms are long. We're going to continue to push our hips back while our knees are slightly bent. We don't want them extended. I think that's the other big issue that we see, is that the knees are completely extending and you're trying to reach for that, and then you start to see all this rounding, because it's the only way that you can get to the barbell is to round. We want to try to keep this as neutral as we can. Arms long, a little bit of knee bend. Continue to push my hips back so that I can get the barbell. I'm feeling the stretch right here pretty bad. Continue to get the barbell. Pull that slack out just like a conventional deadlift or sumo deadlift. Pull that slack out here. And then what we're going to do is then I'm going to kind of engage my upper back and lats just a little bit. Okay? Notice that I'm relatively flat. I'm not really rounded hardly at all. And I'm going to push through my feet and then bring my hips towards the bar. So we'll go up here, reach, here, pull. So the big thing is when I go down, I'm not like, I'm controlling it, but more than a regular deadlift, but I'm not like just completely letting it go. But at the same time, I'm also letting the bar get away from my thighs. So I'm pushing back, and it's staying over basically my knuckles of my toes, even maybe slightly more forward than that, versus, you know, a conventional deadlift, it's probably going to be more closer to us. It doesn't have to always be against you, but it's probably going to be more midfoot, where this is more of the forefoot in terms of where the bar is going to land if you're looking at the laces on your shoes. And then as we pull, we're bringing our hips to meet the bar, so the bar is not as close to us all the time like most of the other deadlift variations. So we're kind of leaving it out in front just a little bit to get that hip to push back, to load it better, and also to make sure that some of our erectors are taking a little bit of the grunt and maintaining that static position, which can be great for building your deadlift. So I think when it comes to the stiff leg deadlift, you really want to emphasize kind of where it's starting in terms of your laces. So I would definitely say the knuckles of your toes, maybe slightly forward on that, depending upon your leverages. Really emphasizing the hips are going back. The back is staying neutral, but we're not overarching, so we're not going to look like this. If anything, we might even have a little bit of flexion and relatively neutral in terms of how the whole spine is going to look. And then we're going to raise it from the ground to the locked out position, and then we're going to go back, and that bar is going to just drift away from us as we continue to perform the exercise. Knowing that this is something that helps build your deadlift, it's obviously probably more of a supplemental exercise on your deadlift day, on your max effort or dynamic effort day, depending upon how your training is structured. And this is definitely something I probably would not say, hey, do stiff leg deadlifts for sets of 10 to 12. I definitely think you're going to want to probably be in the 6 to 8 rep range. You definitely want some strength and hypertrophy qualities. I wouldn't chance it with maintaining position for a ton of repetitions. I think if that's something you're after, then you want to look more at like dumbbell RDLs and pull-throughs and reverse hypers and back extensions and things like that that are generally more safe in nature in terms of the positioning, where this is going to help aid your deadlift, so treat it as such. And I definitely think it's going to help bring that backside up a ton if that's somewhere where you lack. I also think that if you're going to use the stiff leg deadlift, you've definitely met a lot of general training understanding in terms of how to hinge. You know how to RDL. You can squat, conventional deadlift, sumo deadlift, all of those trap bar deadlift. You can do all those exercises good and pristine. And then I think you're ready for something like this, because this does have a little bit more risk to it, but you can also see a big reward as well. So just understand that. And I would say, if anything, don't go over RPE caps of like 8. I just don't think it's really worth it to do a max effort set of stiff leg deadlifts. If you know this is something that's going to help try to build your deadlift, treat it as such in terms of a builder instead of something that you're going to try to test. 3, 4, 5 sets, like I said, 6 to 8 repetitions tends to be a really good spot. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to leave in the comment section. Have a great day.